What's up, family? It is so good to see you. This is the Endangered Species Unapologetically podcast, your neighborhood barbershop that is full of news, politics, and informed conversations. You know how we do in the shop. We are forging a fair and just world by telling our own stories right here. My name is Devon Morris. I'm manning the last chair in the back of the room. So be like my play cousin. Come on in, play some games, talk your ish, and enjoy yourself. We got a chair coming up for you next. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode. This is number 10. Today we're talking about now what? Now what the heck is going to happen after this election has occurred? So look, instead of just jumping into that topic, I'd like to just give you a story first before we do anything else. Let's let that story roll.
40th Congress of the United States of America. At the third session, begun and held at the city of Washington on Monday, the 7th day of December, 1868. A resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, 2/3 of both houses concurring that the following article be proposed to the legislature of the several states as an amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which, when ratified by 3/4 of said legislatures, shall be valid as part of the Constitution. Namely, Article 15, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Passed by Congress, February 26, 1869. Ratified, February 3, 1870.
On March 31st, 1870, one day after the ratification of the 15th Amendment, a handyman cast a ballot in a U.S. election under the provisions of the 15th Amendment. The citizens of Perth Amboy, New Jersey, were voting to revise the town charter or abandon it in favor of a township form of government. In an interview, he said, "I was working for Mr. T.L. Kearney on the morning of the day of the election and did not think of voting until he came out of the stable where I was attending to the horses and advised me to go to the polls and exercise a citizen's privilege. When I went home to dinner at noon, I met Mr. Marcus Spring of Ingleswood, a place about a mile out of town, and he too advised me to claim the right of suffrage at the polls." This handyman would take their advice and participate in the local election held at City Hall over the town's charter. He continued saying, "As I advanced to the polls, one man offered me a ticket bearing the words, 'Revised Charter,' and another marked, 'No Charter.' I thought I would not vote to give up the charter after holding it for so long. So I chose to a revised charter ballot." It was very clear to the handyman that all whites did not support black suffrage. He described how one white man ripped up his own ballot and declared that the idea of voting was worthless if a black man was allowed to vote. This white man would not vote again for at least another decade. With pride, the handyman finishes the story. Our side won the election by a vote of 230 to 63. And I may mention as a coincidence that I was afterwards appointed one of a committee of 7 to revise the charter. On this day, Thomas Peterson Mundy became the first black ex-slave to vote in a U.S. election. He was born October 6, 1824, during slavery to Lucy Green and Thomas Mundy. The family moved to Perth Amboy in 1828, where there was an atmosphere of progressive idealists that supported his right of suffrage and the opportunities for former slaves. He would live out the rest of his life there and died in 1904. Everybody, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. I had to do that just to make sure we tell our own stories. And we'll always continue to do things like that. But we're at a point now where, as we have stated earlier in the podcast, when this thing is released, during that day, America will be voting. America will be voting on the day that this is released and available to you. And just kind of getting our weeks off right, a lot of people are concerned about that election, at least this election that is about to happen. Regardless of who wins, let's talk about now what? Now, what happens after the election? Now, what are we supposed to do next? Okay? Well, it's a simple place to start off. There is rules and regulations to everything, and there's a way that things naturally would occur. So let's just say there's a landslide victory, one side loses, and they decide to challenge. Let's say if it's close, they decide to challenge either side, okay? There are rules put in place for the timely execution of this election. Now, those rules we don't all understand, but I've listed out the at least what's supposed to happen from a timing perspective. So, and then you are just as aware as I am as we prepare to go through this nice little season of from November 3rd to January 20th, Inauguration Day. Because my understanding is that an Inauguration Day is going to happen, period. Okay? Period. There's not going to be a situation where Inauguration Day is going to be late. So I'm thinking from November 3rd until January 20th. Okay? That's the thought process in my head. Now, like any good old American, you know that there are rules that are in place for everything. So, November 3rd is Election Day. The biggest thing that we are voting for is the president and vice president. Those are the things that are really the major topics that are on the ballot. I mean, if you've already been to the polls, you've been to the polls before, this is your first time at the polls, you may not understand that. But if you've been to the polls before, you know that there are a listing of other people that are likely there for, state and local government. And then you probably have some other things that's happening for federal government. You may have some judges, all kinds of things that are there in place for you to kind of vote on. So whatever your slate is, or whatever you're going after, or whoever you're voting for or not voting for, I am really more focused on the president and the vice president tags along with this with this period. Okay? So we will be out to vote November 3rd. All of us will be out there voting, our hearts out, standing in line, doing whatever we can to support the vote. I know that I will be supporting the vote by finding ways to support voters that are currently voting, because I have already cast my vote in the state of Texas the first day. I stood out there, took care of it, made sure it was done and over with, because I just couldn't hold it, right? But the truth of the matter is, the question you have to ask yourself is, the system we have here, are you really voting for the president? And for anybody who knows or remembers, I'll say remembers, because you should remember, your vote is really to pick an elector. Okay? That's your vote. Your vote isn't to pick the president. Your vote is to pick an elector, okay? Or basically a representative in the Electoral College, okay? Now, whether we keep that system or not, different statement, right? But your vote is for that representative in the Electoral College or an elector. That's what you are voting for. Someone to represent your interest in the Electoral College, okay? Now, this person, when the time frame comes, is supposed to cast that vote in your interest because you voted them to do that, okay? And I remember seeing it, being just super interested in it with Obama, okay? First time around, second time around, I didn't think about it. And I also remember being super interested with Hillary Clinton, okay? In terms of, the past years of presidency. So we're talking about 2016, 2008 is when I was really concerned about seeing the entire process go through. And obviously when it comes down to Obama, first black man being elected president was a thing, was definitely a thing. Kind of tears, right? So realistically, your vote isn't to vote for the president. Your vote is to vote for somebody to represent your interest so they can vote for the president. That's what it's all about. Now, the Electoral College was put there for a reason, but I believe that reason is dead now. We have people who have controlling interest in this government that don't represent the people. And they don't represent the majority, as I can best put it, right? There are people that are controlling areas of the government, and they come from small town places. I won't say small town places. They come from places that don't represent the interest of the majority, okay? And okay, that's okay. That's the system we have in place. Do I believe we need to scrap the Electoral College? I'm gonna say yes right now, but I need to think about that. That's one coming up, right? So November 3rd, we get it all out there. We live in a time of major electronics, so nothing's kept a secret. CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, all these different outlets for news or whatever, papers will likely have two versions of things printed. They'll be ready to go because they're going to want to let you know. Everybody wants to be the first to let you know whether they won or not. And normally, from what I understand, it's going to be the TV folks, the cable guys, CNN, probably Fox, that is going to be like, hey, this person won, that person won, right? Past years where I've seen them declare the winner has been on CNN, okay? But I'd imagine Fox does the same thing along with everybody else, okay? So now, that being said, now after that comes the fight, if you want to fight, okay? So, I heard that Hillary Clinton told Biden to not concede. Because what will normally happen is once one party has lost, I mean, it's not really lost just yet. They see that they have no path to win, okay? They will concede to the other party. And then what we do is we start to mend the fences across party lines, so and then we can be one, right? That person, the person that is, the kind of president-elect, starts to mend the fences between all the bad things that have been said back and forth between party members and all this other kind of stuff, right? Because now the realization is there that I'm going to have to work with these people, right? Right now, Biden and Trump, they're the two-party system people that's kind of there. And they're both getting, kind of updates about things that are happening, nationally or with the government, all this kind of stuff, just in case Trump loses and Biden wins, right? If Trump wins, then it's just a continuation of what he already knows. So all those things are happening. So, and then once we really get to the point where they become president-elect, we start making more of that transition. Now, again, there could be all kinds of threats. And you can bring the courts in, and the Supreme Court could come in, and there might be some jostling or everything else like that. But let's just assume for a second that there is no fighting. There is no, let's just say there will be some fighting. Let's look at it a little different than that. Let's just say that you remove out of it, like, the Supreme Court deciding the election, okay? You remove out of it people really doing major things to cheat. Yeah, there likely is going to be a lawsuit, right? And if there's likely a lawsuit, then guess what? We have a situation, or at least some statements in place to deal with that. Now, from November 4th through really December 8th, December 14th, count December 14th, the popular vote can be counted. The popular vote is counted, and you'll hear a word, and that word is certificates of ascertainment. Certificates of ascertainment. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But you're at the point now where everybody has the right to, every single state has the right to get all their votes together so they can create the reports that they need to create, so they can submit those things as needed. So this is that period to do that. Now, lawsuits withstanding, December 8th, 6 days prior to that, is called Safe Harbor Day. There's a deadline. So there's an absolute deadline, okay? So that right there is something that we're not allowed to compromise on. And I'll talk to you about all this stuff in more detail. So votes are being counted, votes are being counted, votes are being counted. And fortunately for us in today's world, votes are counted a lot faster, because when I went in to do my vote, it was pretty much little booth, little sheet of paper, did it go to clicking it did, I looked at it, no chads on the back of it that's hanging off, and then I went in, put it inside of a little machine. Okay? So my vote was being counted, okay? Right then and there, all right? Which means fundamentally it allows for areas, precincts, or whatever to report earlier what their numbers are. It's just like we've mentioned earlier that over 100 million people have voted so far, right? I mean, close to it, right? Now, so the big thing right now, from November until December 14th, is that states will count and begin certifying the results. That's what they're doing. That's what they will be doing over time. So some of those states that aren't really slower, some of those states who have been allowed to maybe go a few days after, Supreme Court has been making statements of everything needs to be counted that day. Understandable. I think there's voter suppression in that. But that's a different problem. Let's not talk about that problem. The idea is that based on the laws of the state and regulations, they have to have the certification done by Safe Harbor Day. They got to have it done because soon after that, we're going to have a representative voting, right? And if they're not there to vote or they're not ready, they could be marked as inconclusive and the votes don't count for an entire state. We don't want that to happen, right? So when the vote is finished, though, the governor of the state must prepare reports. And those reports are the vote totals. And this is what's called the certificates of ascertainment. So realistically, the next thing that happens is we get those vote totals. And the governors are going to report those things. Those certificates right there, which means we will get one across every single state or voting body, right? Great. Now, here's the deal. According to federal law, the certificates must be completed as soon as practical. Period. Certificates of ascertainments includes a list of names of electors who were chosen by the voters. Understand that statement. It's going to be a list of electors. Those electors are the representative for the Electoral College, right? And then along with the votes received in a popular election vote. So fundamentally, the governor of each state, so let's just say the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo, he's going to have a certificate of ascertainment that is going to have the electors listed and the results, okay? Now, do they break those results down or anything like that? I have no clue. But at a base minimum, names of electors and the actual results. I mention that because I know Hillary Clinton says she was an actual elector. Okay? Great. All right, so then what happens is that the losing candidates for the electors and the number of votes are received as well, right? Okay, so you got all this information there. There's 7 copies made, and each must be sealed by the state. One of them sent to the archives for the United States, and then six duplicates go to the state electors by the date that we have to meet to vote. We meet to vote. Well, not we, because we're voting on November 3rd. But the electors meet to vote on December 14th. That's the reason why December 14th is important. That's the reason why there's a safe harbor date, because the law says that 6 days prior to that day, we have to have everything in. Okay, so that is what we need to do between now and then. But that takes us to the safe harbor deadline, because according to federal law, the safe harbor deadline addresses a situation that is intended to bring a close to any dispute over electoral votes. Okay, this is known as the safe harbor deadline. Now let's talk about this. This is critical. This is super duper important. Let's just say, for example, President Trump loses the election. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not predicting anything, okay? So, Trump loses, and let's say he loses close. Like it's 275 to whatever number is left over, right? So you need like 270 to win, right? In terms of electoral college votes. It's like 275 or whatever. And one state like Florida can swing it. Or Texas. One state can swing it, right? So the idea, though, is that if he's suing and he just gets his whole crew of lawyers to sue. Regardless, by Safe Harbor Day, those disputes have to be resolved. Okay? Period. Now, the fact that those disputes have to be resolved means a lot, because that means that we're not going into next year trying to figure out who's going to be the president of the United States of America. Now, there's a statute associated with that. And the statute really says, if the election results are contested in any state, and if the state has enacted procedures to settle controversies over electors and electoral votes, and if the procedures have been applied, and if the results have been determined 6 days before the electors' meeting, then these results are considered to be conclusive and will apply in the counting of the electoral votes. So, if the state has its results and things have been contested, and they have done the procedures that they're supposed to apply based on their rules, 6 days prior to that, the meeting is December 14th. So 6 days prior to that, Harbor Day, December 8th, Safe Harbor Day, I should say, the results will be concluded. So if it's a close thing and they don't get it turned over or changed or something like that prior to that date, then the results shall stand. The results shall stand. It says these results are considered to be conclusive and will apply in counting the electoral votes. Okay? So if Trump is going to have all his lawyers come out, and it seems like everybody's scared about all his lawyers coming out, it doesn't even matter. Whatever they're going to do, they're going to have to resolve it within a month. Within a month, they're going to have to resolve it. So they got about 20 to 25 days to get it all resolved. Okay? If they don't, those results will stand. Okay? If they don't, those results will stand. Now, that's important for you to know and understand because a lot of us don't know about Safe Harbor Day, and that's one of the major reasons why I wanted to have this conversation about now what, okay? Because there is a process in place, just in case folks want to fight about it, okay? Now, that does say a lot of things because the rest of the schedule is based on that. It's based on this December 14th date. Now, this December 14th date, 6 days prior to that, is always Safe Harbor Day. Safe Harbor Day. Now, or the deadline, I should say. Now, this December 14th is actually set by law. It is the Monday after the second Wednesday in December. So this is always set. So every time we have this happen, you think the Monday after the second Wednesday. The Monday after the second Wednesday. So you go count 1 Wednesday, 2 Wednesdays, and the Monday after that, you know that's when the Electoral College is happening. Okay? That's when people can go in and actually have their vote. 6 days prior to that, whatever that date is, bam. Bam. The deadline is over. So by midnight or whatever time it is, I'm assuming that they count all of whatever states, so maybe it's going to be Hawaii. You count Hawaii, right? Whatever time that is, by midnight, boom, it's done and over with. Okay? So, we do have some recourse of this thing not lasting forever, okay? Of this thing not lasting forever. And it's important for us to have that resource, that recourse of it not lasting forever because, you know, this right here, if there's going to be a fight in terms of this election, it is going to rip a much bigger hole inside of this fabric we call America. So we want to get this resolved as soon as possible. Now, let's flip the script. Let's say, what if Joe Biden loses and Trump wins in a landslide? Yeah, I don't think Biden would sue. I just don't. Okay. If it's a landslide on the other side, I don't know. I think Trump may still sue, especially in states that are closer, right? But that is just part of what that truth is, okay? Now, what happens now? We're past the 8th. We've reached December 14th. So then, this is the deadline for us to meet, the Electoral College, right? They meet at the places of the state's legislator, okay? And voting on paper ballots, they cast their vote for the president and a separate vote for the vice president. That's what's going to happen. The votes are counted, and then the elector assigns 6 certificates that include a list of the electoral votes for the president. The certificates and the votes are paired up with the certificates of ascertainment, sealed and certified. The certificates are sent to registered mail. That's sent there. The president of the Senate, who is going to be the vice president of the United States, okay? It's going to be sent to them. It's going to be sent to the Secretary of State in the state. The person that does the archives or records will get 2 copies, and then the judge of the United States District Court in the district where the electors met. Okay, so this is the system of places where those 6 items go to, right? So there's a system in place, okay? And again, I remember all the hoopla that happened as people gave their vote and how they were showing that on TV and everything else. When I saw it in 2016, I paid extra attention to it then because, you know, it was a historic election regardless, because Trump was an outsider for sure, and then Hillary Clinton was on the verge of being the first woman president of the United States of America. You know, regardless of who won, it was going to be epic, okay? Trump won, and it was epic, and it's been epic since that time, okay? Now, some days after that, you know, December 23rd, the certificates must be delivered to the designated officials by that time. Now, this again is stated. The certificates have to reach the officers named above by the 4th Wednesday in December. So again, we got these strict deadlines, right? 2nd Wednesday, boom, Monday after that. 3rd Wednesday is going to happen, 4th Wednesday, okay? Things have to be received, okay? So again, there's just this systematic way that things occur over and over again, okay? So now we go through our holiday, we get into the new year. January 6th, joint session of Congress. Now, I want to make sure we note something, okay? January 6th is going to be what? It's going to be the first Wednesday. The first Wednesday of the new year. So that first Wednesday of the new year, boom, right on it. Now, if the first Wednesday was January 1st, I don't think that would happen. Okay? But that first Wednesday, bam, January 6th. Okay? So maybe the first Wednesday after the first Monday. I don't know what the rule is. But the idea is that by that particular time, there's going to be a joint session. Now, what do I mean by a joint session? What I mean by a joint session is something that's not complicated. A lot of you have been familiar with it. It's going to be the House and the Senate meeting together for a joint session. They're meeting together, okay? So 1 p.m. Eastern time, okay? They're going to have a joint session. The vice president, who will be serving as the president of the Senate, okay, will open the certificates and present the certificates to 4 runners, 4 different people. Okay, 2 for one side, Senate, 2 for the other side, the actual House. Okay, and they're going to go and read those out to them. Okay, making the results known to both sides of the House, even though everybody already knows, right? So this right here is, you know, part of the show. Okay, the ticket that gets the majority votes, the 270, majority of the Electoral College votes, is going to be the president of the United States of America. Period. That's it. That's how the entire system works. The entire system works this way. Okay? And so that joint session, if there are going to be challenges to those electoral votes, that can happen. So then we got some rules in place for that. Okay? Members of each chamber that object to the votes in terms of the certificates, right, they got to put that in writing. At least one member of both houses, okay, they got to put that in writing, right? If both a House and Senate member objects, the joint session goes into recess, separates and debates the question, and then they have 2 hours to do so. Separately, they come back together, resume the joint session, and announce the results. Both houses must approve the objection in order to keep the votes from being counted. So, now, again, understand the statement. January 6th, they come together. Both sides have some disagreement about what has occurred. They go, delineate for 2 hours. Then they come back. They have to justify why those votes shouldn't be counted. Now, this is one of those places where, let's just say that did happen and they didn't count the votes. Man, do you realize how much of an uproar there would be in the United States of America? It's one thing that we don't get to, our vote really doesn't count directly toward. But it's another thing when our vote doesn't count, and then it doesn't count because some old folks in the Senate that we elected from our votes that counted decide to do something different. You're talking about riots and all kinds of problems in the good old United States of America. Yes, there will be some problems. Okay? That would be like somebody stole the government. For real. So, that takes us to our next step. January 20th, the inauguration. The inauguration happens. Normally the vice president goes first in terms of being sworn in, and then the president is sworn in after that because the president is the main show, right? So that's pretty much how things will progress moving forward. Now, in terms of things moving forward that way, there isn't anything to be surprised about. We have a way to deal with the problems that do exist in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Okay? And that brings me some level of comfort, even though I can't say that I necessarily trust the institutions. It's just truth, right? Because it seems like the institutions always find a way to do something. Like this Supreme Court justice being, kind of rammed down everybody's throat into the Supreme Court, right? Even with something like that, right? And even though they got a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court right now in terms of conservatives or Republicans, whatever you want to call it, anything like that shows they're not being fair to the American people, especially with all the things that have happened in 2020, I think you may have a situation at hand. I think you may have a huge situation at hand. Which is crazy, right? That's crazy. Because you could think to yourself that all this stuff could really fall apart. We're the cusp of, if I want to just kind of put things to the side for a minute and say to myself, what happens if the election is stolen? It's one thing President Trump, the 40, I was talking to somebody today and they would not say his name. They said 45. And that's what they kept saying. 45. I was like, okay, I know what you mean. So anyway, the point is that Donald Trump was not the popular vote winner. He was the Electoral College winner, and that allowed him to win. And pretty much the Republicans had 2 presidents since I've been voting that have won that way. Bush beat Gore back in the day, and it was around Florida, and Trump beat Hillary back in the day now, and that was all around Florida as well. So it does concern me when I think about somebody losing a popular vote by a landslide and still finding a way to actually get around that and win. That would be super concerning. I don't know how this government survives if that happens. There's no way this government can survive if that happens, because now the people now the general population don't have trust in the institution. And not having trust in the institution will be a huge problem, because the thing that you have to remember, well, let's just say something really different, right? Let's talk about one place. Let's talk about my experience of what I've seen so far, okay? Now, I've been voting in the state of Texas since 2016. Prior to that, I wasn't voting in Texas, right? So now, I'm voting in Texas, right? Now, here's the deal. In terms of me voting in Texas, I remember when I went to go vote. Same place. Look, college I go to, I literally voted early, right? I don't think it was on the first day, though. I don't think I voted on the first day. But I voted early regardless, right? And when I voted, when I tell you there was no wait, I pretty much walked straight to the door, like peon, walked straight to the door, right? And I walked straight to the door. They was like, okay, ID, da-da-da, speak to that person, here you go, boom, I'm over there voting, I'm out of there, right? 5 minutes, man. 5 minutes, right? Nah, this time it wasn't the same. I mean, this time the vote was so important for me to make. So important, as you heard me say, so important for me to make. It was so important for me to make that I had to vote on the first day. Because I couldn't in my being, my existence, hold the actual vote. I just could not do it. I mean, I stood in that line for 4 hours, man. Man, I lied. Maybe it was like 3 hours and some change. But then I had to get there, get back to the crib, get back home. And I've never been in line that long to go vote. Never in my life. And I definitely don't go vote on the first day. But, I wasn't going to risk trying to vote on the day of the election, because I would prefer being in a position that if some organizations need for me to come and use my card to get people to the polls, I'm willing to do that, So here's the deal. I was so very, very proud of the fact that I was seeing a bunch of people who look like me, non-white, there. When I say non-white, it was just so interesting seeing like a couple in back of me that was definitely Hispanic, more than likely Mexican, this ancestry, and she was struggling. It was a couple. She was struggling, and she had to sit down a lot. And I remember saying to her, "Look, just please, just go ahead and have a seat. We got your spot. Don't worry about it, right?" And seeing folks letting older. I remember seeing a black woman with a cane sitting down as her friends all just stand in line the whole time and make it all the way up. And then when they got up to the front, she got called in, right? Just people taking care of people, right? And I live in a place where there's a lot of non-whites. But in this moment, there was a lot of pride, because what I saw in the line was a lot of people like me. I had a young black guy who was in front of me, who is just working on his life, probably about 10, I think he was maybe 20 years younger than me. Yeah, maybe 10 to 20 years younger than me. And talking to him about life and marriage and divorce and, entrepreneurship and, and just almost like creating those friends in that moment. It was a beautiful thing. It was an absolutely beautiful thing. I enjoyed myself, right? I really, really did. I didn't have a single problem waiting. And would have held the spot for anybody. Because I looked in people's eyes, and in their eyes was, this is important. This right here is important. And my vote matters. Even though we can talk about this electoral college thing, right? Even though we can talk about that. My statement clearly is, my vote actually matters. Wow. That's a statement by itself. You understand? But I'm going to tell you something. Even though it's a very disproportionate number of people versus when I voted in 2016, I didn't see anybody that looked like me in 2016 when I voted at the same exact place. I didn't see anybody that looked like me or was a non-white in that same exact place when I voted, and there had to be at least 10 people there. Between people walking out, people walking in with me, there had to be 10 voters in that transition point, several voting there and stuff like that, right? And I didn't see a single non-white, okay? Here's the problem, Texas, that you have. If Texas, of all states, flips from red to blue, from being Republican to being Democrats, the Republican Party is done. It's over. Now, look, I by no means am hating on the Republican Party. The Republican Party was the party that we gravitated to back in the day because the Democratic Party was all the KKK and all this trying to kill us type stuff back in the day. So I definitely am not down with the cause like that, right? And I already know that Lincoln did not free the slaves because he really, really wanted to. Yeah. I get that the Republicans was a progressive party. I understand that. I get that. But them back then versus them back now is completely different, and that flipped on its head for many, many reasons. But in today's world, this state of Texas is a red state, a Republican state. This state of Texas, if it flips from red to blue, Donald Trump, I don't know what path you have to win. Forget Donald Trump though. Let's assume that this does turn blue and Donald Trump does win the election. The clear statement is the Republican Party is done. Because here's the problem. The thing that I noticed in that line that was probably the most important thing for me to see was first-time voters. Did you hear that statement? First-time voters. And none of those first-time voters were white. Now, I'm assuming that there were some, right? But none of them were white. The vast majority of them out there in the lines that I was in was non-white. And this state right here, with the amount of, lack of a better term, immigration, I'm not talking about from non-U.S. citizens. I'm talking about the amount of U.S. citizens coming to this state that live a different type of lifestyle, that are of a different type of race, color, nationality, creed, whatever it is. There's an influx coming to Texas. You understand? And if I look at my neighborhood is a neighborhood of a bunch of mixed people. You know, I don't have a neighborhood full of white folks. Was it that way years ago? More so. So the problem you have is really simple. My kids are now in a position where some of them have their first time to vote. They have their first time to vote. And the ones that aren't going to be voting for this first time, when it comes back around the next time, it's going to be their first time to vote. Understand what I'm saying to you. My kids' friends are progressive idealists. They have an ideal way that they want the world to be. And you know what party doesn't meet that? Well, we talked about them earlier. So when you have a state whose population is going to be so non-white that it is likely that this state will go in the direction that these generations of people that are now getting an opportunity to vote, they will have an opportunity to shape these elections. So for the state of Texas, you have double the trouble because you're a red state and you're a huge red state with an influx of immigrants that think different. I always have to ask people, are you originally from Texas? Because I don't always run into native Texans. So if the Republican Party in Texas flipped, it would be a day I never thought it would happen. See, I'm from Chicago, and being from Chicago, it's blue, man. It's Democrat all day. Big cities is just kind of that way, you know? So I know what's going to happen there. I know that Chicago is going to drive the rest of Illinois, so I'm good. It's always been. But Texas, boy, Texas. You got some problems if that thing flips. So, you know, this voting thing is very interesting. And what's going to happen after the voting thing is going to have an impact. But the real impact is, did you get out there and participate in this experiment of a democracy? And I can't even really call it a democracy from the things that you hear about and know about people being picked, you know. I mean, I'm looking at pictures of people who were sitting with presidents, who became presidents, and I guarantee you they was picked, right? And it feels that way. It looks that way, right? So, white supremacists, people who support the white nationalist agenda, you only got a few more cracks at this. And the thing that's interesting is that you have done things with the judicial system that doesn't lean toward the popular vote, doesn't lean toward the popular consciousness. And if that is going to be a problem, even that will change. Because I would guarantee you that 2020 is a year of reckoning. Not because of the coronavirus. No. Just pandemics are just a great leveler. Pandemics are just one of the things that happen that get people to see a reality that takes nations and brings nations to its very knees. In America, you have been brought to your knees. So now the question is, what are you going to do and where are your citizens going to go with this? So from now to 2024, there's going to be so many changes. It's going to be unbelievable because the people are taking control of what their future is going to look like. And boy, I've been supporting this for so long, in my buying decisions, in my shopping decisions, in my, who I'm going to mentor decisions. I've been supporting this for so long. I just can't wait to see it happen. Because it's no longer my America that I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for my kids' America. I'm fighting for their children's America. I'm fighting for those people I'm trying to lift up to continue this journey, America. If there's going to continue being America. You know, Jeff Bezos said recently that every company will, no matter what the company, every company will die. Every company will no longer exist. Every country will no longer exist. Every one of them. I mean, the Egyptians had a long run at it, right? I mean, we talking about thousands of years, right? So I don't know of any culture that compares to that. But it's a different time. So now is the time. What I'm going to say to you that's really important to kind of close this out. One thing that I've never had a fear of is black folk organizing. Whenever you can organize to go get beat down, and you can convince people of organizing to go get beat down, you are a people that is willing to go through anything to get rights for the future. So, what we need to be doing now, as these election results come through, we need to start organizing so we can start pressing, as Ice Cube said. We can start pressing the people that are in office so that we get the things we desire, and not just things for everybody. I agree with things for everybody. I support things for everybody. But I also recognize that descendants of slaves, native blacks, people who kind of want reparations from the fact that we were slaves, whatever that is, right? Those people that have that connection have been put at the bottom of America's caste system. I am one of those people that have been put at the bottom of America's caste system, and there's no logical reason why I should be there. No logical reason why I should be there. But it is time for us to take our actions now. Starting now, we need to start organizing. We need to start moving forward because we have the ability. Black folks do nothing but organize. When you have songs around protest, that it takes organization to sing a song. Okay? So we can pull together tournaments for things. We can pull together just about anything, but it's on us to begin that process of moving forward. So let's do it. Okay? These are things that I would like for us to begin those conversations about. For us to begin moving forward, talking about. So, on that note, I'm going to say to you, I've enjoyed this one. I look forward to having more conversations around our tactics as we move forward after this election. I'm going to say to you, look, whatever the results are, it matters, but we're going to survive it. I don't think either party get in office it's going to try to do a whole lot for us. But we don't have to take that. We don't have to take that. And since we're not going to take it, we need to start organizing so that we can deal with and make change happen. On that note, I'm going to say it's been wonderful and great. I look forward to seeing you next week to help you begin that week in the right way. I'll see you soon. Peace, people. Thanks for visiting the shop. You know there's absolutely no me without you. But before you walk out that door, make sure you visit us at Endangered Species Unapologetically.com. You will find ways to stay connected with us. Take a look at our show notes of the episodes, bonus material, as well as that merchandise that you know Hustle Man got over there in the corner. When you're ready to break those chains, we got some stuff there for you to make your life better. However, as the old folks would say, Be safe out there, young blood. See you next week.